welcome to Ed Foodie. Today we're going to make some sauerkraut. It's November, New Year's is right around the corner, and we like to have pork roast and sauerkraut for New Year's, so we're going to make some homemade sauerkraut this year. I need to say I got this recipe from my son. I was visiting his house one time. He made this homemade sauerkraut and I really liked it, so this recipe is from him, and thank you very much, Chris. This takes a couple of weeks to finish up because it takes, you have to ferment it. We'll just do a little bit of this video today, then we'll come back in 3 weeks and finish it up. So the first thing we want to do is to get 2 pounds of shredded cabbage. I've got this head, it's a little bit over 2 pounds, so I'm going to add a little bit of extra of all the spices to compensate. Now, easy thing to do would be you can go get your like coleslaw mix. It's already shredded for you. There'll be maybe some carrots in there, and that'll be fine. Some green cabbage, red cabbage, that'll be fine also. So that's a much easier way, but it's also a little more expensive. So I'm gonna slice this up, get it all nice and shredded to look like kind of like coleslaw. All right, so I got my pretty big bowl of shredded cabbage. And I made mine maybe a little thicker than you want to. Mine's gonna not be like real thin and stringy like normal sauerkraut. But I want to use this more as like a pickled cabbage too. So we'll see what this turns out. And be sure you put this in a non-metal bowl, so either plastic or rubber, because the metal will interfere with the chemical reactions. All right, so the next step is I've got about 15 juniper berries. And again, I may end up putting a little bit more. This doesn't seem like much. Matter of fact, I'll do that now. I'm gonna put in maybe 20. I've got 2 teaspoons of caraway seeds and 2 teaspoons of yellow mustard seed. Then the last thing here, I've got 3 teaspoons, can you see that good? 3 teaspoons of, I'm not using pickling salt, I'm just using natural sea salt. But you want to make sure you get a salt that's 100% pure salt with no other additives in there, especially iodine. Usually you get the iodized salt, you don't want that. It's not going to hurt anything, it'll just make it look bad. It'll look cloudy. And if you do it with pure salt, it'll be more clear liquid. All right, I got my gloves on, and what we're going to do here is just kind of toss this. And as we're tossing it, kind of squeeze it, because what you want to do is bruise the leaves of the cabbage. And this bruising and the salt is what starts to release this should release some water out of the cabbage. And this bruising of the cabbage will actually kind of start the fermenting process. This looks like a lot, but it says it's only going to make a quart. I don't know, we'll see. I think I'm going to get more than a quart out of this. All right, so we're going to let this sit, a couple hours. 3 hours would be better, but we'll see how much liquid we get here in 2 hours. So you can let it sit, hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Obviously, the longer you let it sit, the more this process is going to start working. Let me show you what I got going here. You don't have to go through all this huge process. I got my old canning equipment out. And what I'm doing is I got 4 pint jars in there, wide mouth, that I'm sterilizing. When you put the cabbage into these jars, you want to use sterilized jars so that no bad bacteria starts growing. You could just put jars in a regular pot of water. Just make sure the jars are completely covered. And what's nice about these canning is the rack kind of holds the bottles up a little bit from the bottom of the pan. So if you're just going to put them in a regular pan, don't have too hot of heat. I mean, you want that water to boil, but if you have it too hot, you might break the glass jars. Then some other equipment I'm going to use just to make it easier. This is just to pick up the jars out of because they'll be hot. And then I'll put this on top of the jar when I start putting in the cabbage. And what that does is it keeps any liquid or the cabbage from getting on the actual jar and the seal, so that it does seal pretty good. And you don't have to have these. I'm just saying it just makes it easier, and I had them, so I'm going to use them. All right, it's been sitting here for 2 hours. I've tossed it like maybe once or twice and kind of pressed it down again during those 2 hours. We have our canning jars hot, sterilized. We'll pull them out now. And I'm using pint jars, wide mouth pint jars instead of the quart. I'll go ahead and pull these both out. So like I said, you don't need this. I'm just doing it to keep the salt and the juices and stuff off the rim, so it gets a little bit better of a seal. So now all we're going to do is pack as much cabbage in the jar as we can. And yeah, it's kind of amazing how much this cabbage went down. It was pretty much a full thing of, and there is a lot of moisture in here. So this is getting to be more like a science experiment. If you remember when we did the Chinese dumplings, Catherine said it was important to not put the salt in the one vegetable mixture until you're ready to use it. Otherwise it gets runny. And that's exactly what happens here. Except in this case, we want the moisture. We'll just do 2 and I'll do the other one. Maybe I'll get 4 out of this. Okay, now what I've got here, and here's where again it's important, you don't want chemicals in here. You want a natural fermentation process. I've got 1 cup of water that bottled water that we got from the store. So there's no chemicals, no chlorine, don't use tap water. Use filtered water. And I've got 1 teaspoon of the uniodized salt or pickling salt. We're going to pour in here till we get almost to the top. And then I have the same thing on this one. All right, so now we're going to pull our lids out. All right, so I'm going to wipe this rim off and the top of the rim. And then put, again, and these, the lids were also in the boiling water, so they're also sterilized. And we're just going to very loosely put these on, not tight at all. So now we're going to let these sit and we'll check back in an hour or two. They're supposed to like bubble a little bit. So I guess some of the cabbage may absorb a little bit of that salt water. And then before we're finally finished, we'll add a little bit more water if we need to the top of the rim. And then we'll let these sit for, I'm gonna let them sit for 2 weeks. All right, just a couple of reminders, helpful hints. If you notice, when I was putting the cabbage in the jars, I was using a wooden spoon. So again, it's important not to let anything metal get in contact with inside that jar. So you can use wooden or plastic. And then also on the salt, if you can get the canning salt, that definitely would be best. I'm using 100% sea salt. Now I don't know if 100% sea salt, does it have any minerals in it? I don't know. Maybe it does. So if mine turns out a little bit cloudy, that will probably be the reason why. It said to let the bubbles come out, and I think that was only just to get the air bubbles that may have been in there from the cabbage. Now just to, again, top off to the top, close to the top of the rim as you can. So now we can put these on a little bit tighter. All right, like I said, we'll come back in 2 weeks. I will let these sit out at room temperature. You want it between like 60 and 70 degrees for the 2 weeks. Then after 2 weeks, if that's what we like, the sourness and the tartness is good, then I'm gonna store mine in the refrigerator. I don't know that you really have to, except it may keep it more crunchy and crispy. My wife, Catherine, makes something similar, just with like a Chinese Napa cabbage, and she just puts it in a big jar, and it stays in there maybe 3 or 4 weeks sometimes before we finish it, and we've never had a problem. So okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay, it's been 2 weeks, actually 15 days, that our sauerkraut or cabbage has been sitting. And what I did this morning was put one of these in the refrigerator because I want to eat mine cold and see, I want to make sure it's crispy. So let's give one of these a taste. So actually, this is sealed pretty good. I can't just take it off. So I'm going to use a little can opener. All right, let's try this. It's definitely more like a sauerkraut than pickled cabbage, so that's good. That's what we wanted. Well, it's good. You want to try it? You like sour things?
This is good.
Yeah, well, I can hear you crunching over here. All right, there you go, some homemade sauerkraut. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to Dead Foodie right over there. And thank you for watching.